Welcome to This Week in Missouri Politics from the campus of Lincoln University in Jefferson City. Terrific place. Next time you come to the state capitol, your visit is not complete. Come look at Lincoln, all the things happening here. We are joined by someone who has family ties. The folks and still people at this college remember what your dad did for them when he was governor. Jay Ashcroft, there's a long history of your family tied to this college.
Well, it's a wonderful institution. It gets forgotten in Jefferson City. It's been great to me the last 3 years when we've had our legislative retreat on education. We've had it here to talk about how do we truly make sure that every child has the opportunity for great education. So
I want to ask you, there's this, you know, when you watch some news channels, you see everything's about the elections, the last election. Not so much the national, but locally in Missouri, what are some things that you believe the state should do to make it where everybody in this state can feel like they got a fair shake when they run, their voice got a fair shake? What do you do to make folks have, I guess, election integrity in Missouri?
You know, we'd like to get to a real good government photo ID requirement that makes sure that every registered voter can vote, but also we know who you are to make sure that people aren't cheating the system that way. Love to go to hand-marked paper ballots. I've never known anybody that said you can hack a number 2 pencil.
Mind if I interrupt you?
Sure.
So I've always thought, you know, when I come on the show, I try to at least see where folks are coming from. I kind of tell you where my background's from and my perspective, but the voter ID is a real challenge. I've never really heard a good argument. I watched, at the time, Republican Chris Koster be in the chair when they PQ'd to pass it once. The best argument I guess I've ever heard against it is some folks don't have a photo ID. But do you feel the state should give you one for free then?
Well, we do.
Yeah.
We give people a free photo ID. We provide the underlying documents as necessary for free. And of course, if you don't have that government issued photo ID, you can still vote that provisional ballot. And then we just verify that you were who you said you were after the polls have closed. So you still get to vote. It's designed so that we have accessibility and we have security.
So I understand normally Republicans are for it, Democrats are against it. It's the one thing when you really get a Democrat kind of behind the scenes, they're like, well, really, it'll give an advantage, right?
Well, when you ask normal, everyday people from any political stripe, they're like, yeah, that makes sense. Unfortunately, it's when you get into some of the partisans on the fringes of politics that want to make a partisan issue about everything, that's when you run into that. What we have found is that we can do that. Actually, Missouri increased access to the ballot when we did our first photo ID law that worked in 2017.
You know, you had a great quote. I got to hear you speak in Bowling Green. I won't go into the whole quote, but basically said you have to same people that want to show a card that you were vaccinated to go into a grocery store. They don't think you should show an ID to vote. There's a conflict in logic there.
Well, I think there's a real disagreement about who should be in charge. We have Brand X that thinks the government is in charge and that people are here to serve the government. And I think you have conservative Republicans that are standing there saying, no, we the people are supposed to have the power. We the people are supposed to have the ability to make our own decisions. The government is supposed to be responsive to us. That's why we have elections. That's why we choose who should be leading us.
So what else? Photo ID, then what else should Missouri do?
Hand-marked paper ballots. Let's not have to worry about cyber attacks. I've never known anybody that could hack a number 2 pencil. Have that hand-marked by the voter. Then for the tabulation equipment, let's mandate that equipment cannot be capable of being connected to an internet. Let's allow the Secretary of State's office to have public disassembly and penetration testing of that equipment so people not only are told that it can't, but they can see with their own eyes that they can't be connected.
So you mean an option to have a regular paper ballot, or does everybody in the state has to have just a regular paper ballot market?
Everyone except for individuals that for certain circumstances, we have individuals with certain disabilities. We need to make sure they can vote also, but for everyone else, hand-marked paper ballot, and you don't have a problem.
The argument against that, I guess, is it's convenient to just go in and tap your iPad and vote, right?
It is, but then you don't inherently know that what you tapped was necessarily what was on the ballot.
Something I think is important is there's a lot of parts of this state where the lines are make it where a person that wants to vote in their lunch hour, let's be honest, most people have to work a Tuesday in November. They have maybe an hour before they drop the kids off, maybe an hour after. If the line is too long, it's just not realistic for someone with a job and kids to vote. Would a paper ballot not make that longer?
Well, I don't think it would at all. And of course, under Missouri law, your employer is required to give you 3 hours to go vote on Election Day.
Is that real, though?
Well, yeah, that is the law.
If you're swinging
we enforce
a hammer in Wentzville and you say, I want 3 hours off to vote, is the foreman going to frown his nose a little bit at you?
Well, we have not seen that historically in the state that that's been a problem. But the best way to do that, if that is a problem, is to require local election authorities to ensure that there are enough polling places.
Yeah.
Elections are important, and they're not about the Secretary of State inherently. They're not about the local election authority. They're about we, the people, making a decision. And we need to do whatever is necessary to make sure there are enough polling places, there are enough ballots there so that people can go in and vote.
My mama took me to vote. I remember at Twin Springs Church in West Butler County, and the line was, 20 minutes or so. If that line was an hour, I don't know that she could have done that. And I think it is hard. Most folks don't know they have time off to vote, and I'm not sure that most folks working and living would take the time off. Should the state put some money into making more polling places? What do you do?
The state does put money, but local election authorities, the county clerks, the boards of elections, the election commissioner, they're actually in charge of how those elections are run. I can work with them. I can suggest and say, hey, don't reduce your polling locations. But if the state wants to get involved in that, it would take legislation. And I don't think it's a bad thing for us to be looking at how long does it take people and use that as a metric to rate how good our local election authorities are doing.
Sometimes St. Louis folks aren't the most sympathetic folks. But I really do feel for folks in St. Louis. Those lines, I really do believe regular folks that they're not partisan, they don't live in dire politics, they don't vote because they drive up and the line's wrapped around the building and they just don't have time.
Well,
your heart goes out to folks like
in
that.
St. Louis County, they have a new system where you can go to any polling place to vote. You don't have to go to the one that you're assigned when that you normally go. Their system tracks where you go. They have a web application. I think they have an app for your phone also where you can see what the waiting time is at like the 5 or 10 nearest polling places.
It was great. I looked at it and they were all over 2 hours.
And, well, they did have some problems with the reporting of that, but they actually have voluntarily joined a program where they are keeping track of their wait times at polling places so they can use that going forward. I appreciate that commitment to doing the best job possible.
What else? What else could Missouri reasonably do?
I think those are the main three that would, if you go to paper ballots, you're not worried about the cyber attacks on the machine. If you're requiring a photo ID, then you know that people are who they say they are. If they vote twice, once in your state and another state, which we have referred to prosecutors, it makes us easier to prosecute those. I think those are the top three. We'd love to, the idea of the penetration testing, being able to make sure the election authorities are cleaning their voter rolls, being able to send in third-party teams to check the security, both physical and cyber, of local election authorities. I hate the idea of curing ballots for some people but not other people, and not necessarily having bipartisan teams doing that, but you can have a partisan official going in to one area of the state saying, I want ballots from this exact precinct, and I'm going to go work with those. That just strikes me as a really bad idea.
The part just my hillbilly horse sense, I like the fact that a paper ballot and voter ID are things Republicans like, and more polling places would probably give Democrats a better, probably overall, one of the three probably might help more Democrats vote. Right now, if a Missouri election was close, we don't have a lot of close general elections in Missouri on the state level, but if there was if something changed and it was close, how confident are you that you could produce a good outcome?
I'm
Not
confident
Florida close,
that
but
the
close.
people could create a good outcome. Because
One you'd believe in, right?
I think we do that now.
Yep.
I do think it'd be great if there was a mechanism for us to do audits at some time spacing. I don't know if that would be something where every 10 years we do a big audit and then we do very much less intensive audit in regular intervals to make sure that we're doing things the way we said we could. Right now, there's a mandatory 5% audits of ballots that's done by the local election authorities before certification. That's not really an all-encompassing look, and I think it would help the people of our state to have confidence if we did that.
Right now, when you certify a statewide race, you can be confident, right? The right person won.
Yes.
So let's take it nationally. There's been a lot of folks talk about national stuff. I look at other states. Some have similar laws that we do. Some have more voter ID things than we do, some less. You look back on it, you know more about elections than anybody that's in my phone. Do you think the right person is the president? Do you think Trump has a point? It always looked to me like maybe Trump has a point, but the right person probably won the election.
Well, when it comes right down to it, the election for president is done by the presidential electors. And the presidential electors voted for President Joe Biden. There were concerns with how elections were operated in Pennsylvania and Georgia and other places. In some of those states, we know they didn't follow their own laws. We know they violated their own
Do
constitutions.
you look at those laws and see how that might happen in Missouri and kind of cross-check yourself with
Of course.
problems over there? Yeah.
I like to look at what everyone else is doing to see if there's a good idea. I can steal it and work with our legislature to implement it. I think we should always be looking not only to see is what we're doing good, but how can we do it better, and how can we make sure people have confidence in the process going forward.
End of the day, my assumption is you didn't vote for Joe Biden, but does Missouri's top election official believe that the right person's in the White House?
Well, there's multiple questions.
The right person won the election, yes.
I believe that the presidential electors elected Joe Biden.
So let's talk, before I let you go, I want to talk about, you've been to all 114 counties, you do it every year. This year, so we're in mid-October. Where are you at this year?
I've got about 8 counties left.
Boy, you're going to wrap up early, right?
Well, it's the right thing to do. Because I don't serve, no offense, I don't serve the governor, I don't serve the other statewide, I serve the people of the state. And I think it's important that elected officials get out. We meet the people where they are, give them the opportunity to not just listen, but to talk and tell me what I should know and what I should think. And I think it makes it easier for me to do my job to say, wait a minute, that sounds good, but I was just down, or I was up in DeKalb County, and they said this, and we need to take that into account before we do something.
A couple years ago, I was behind you in St. Clair County in Osceola, and it meant something to those folks that you take the time to drive. And it's a big state. Folks don't really, if you live in one part of the state, you don't understand how far Tarkio is from Pemiscot County. It's a haul. I mean, that is a neat thing. I would think you've learned so many things about the state that helps you serve it by actually going out to every county.
I've learned a lot. In 2015, I think I put 70,000 miles on my car.
Well, Mr. Secretary of State, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
I'm doing my mini J. Ashcroft impression, as you know, going to each county, talking about the history of the state. This week, my old buddy Nate Walker and I met at Truman State and talked about Adair County. We talked about AT Still. If you couldn't afford your surgery, he'd just sell tickets and do it outside and let you pay for it. The history of Missouri, one county at a time, showmissouri.com. We'll be right back after this.
All across Missouri, our new car and truck dealers are building strong local economies. When you buy a car or truck in Missouri, you're helping to support over 20,000 Missouri families who rely on the auto industry for good-paying local jobs. You're also helping fund our communities, schools, first responders, and our roads, because dealers generate millions of dollars in tax revenue. Missouri's automobile dealers have been the foundation of our communities for generations and for generations to come. The Missouri Automobile Dealers Association, the heart of Missouri.
For more than a century, the St. Louis Carpenters Union has shaped our communities. Through trusted alliances, we deliver skilled professional craftspeople, while our business partners provide the kind of quality jobs that keep our economy humming. It's a blueprint that has worked since 1882. Turning Missouri into a right-to-work state stalls progress, wipes out jobs, and kills momentum. Right to work is wrong for everyone. Let's keep Missouri moving forward. Visit carpdc.org to learn more.
Your energy needs are changing. That's why at Ameren, Missouri, we're not waiting on the future. We're building it with the Smart Energy Plan, advancing thousands of projects across the state, helping reduce emissions through cleaner energy sources, boost reliability with self-healing equipment, and better withstand storms with new composite poles. Moving Missouri forward and bringing us all a little closer together. That's energy at work.
Welcome back to Week in Missouri Politics. From Lincoln University, we are joined by Don Mayhew, Mr. Central Missouri. Appreciate your time. And the man at a political event you should go set by for great commentary.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. Lovely being here.
Stephanie Bell, alderwoman, attorney, radio host. First time on the show. Thank you for making the time.
Thanks for having me.
And the Mayor of Columbia, Brian Treece, thank you for making the time.
It's great to be back with you.
The Prince of Phelps County, Jack Cardetti. I tell you what, I was a little surprised this week when there was a press conference. You thought, okay, hastily called press conference means big news. Governor comes out and says someone from, I guess, the Post had hacked into the website of DESE and found some personal information of some teachers. I don't know the Post is going to back away from that, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's the good thing and the bad thing about being governor is when something good happens in state government, you own it, right? Something bad, you also own it. We used to have a saying in the governor's office, which is, that's a known problem and we got our best people working on it. That's probably what the governor should have said today, right? There was some sloppy IT work, it looked like, on the DESI thing. Some public-facing information showed Social Security numbers. Nobody's going to hold that against the governor. He's not an IT guy, but he's got to fix it, and he's got to say, this is a problem, and we're going to do that. That's what he should have done.
So Stephanie Bell, I'm glad that you're an attorney. What the governor did say was, this person hacked in. He alleged there be some criminal parts of this. He referred it to Locke Thompson, the local prosecuting attorney. If the person did hack in, will they go to jail? What happens now?
Well, I'm not a criminal attorney, so, but I do think the governor did the right thing. He said, hey, we have an issue, we've identified the issue, and we're going to hold the people accountable. And I think he came out and said exactly the right thing.
Brian Treece, you are the mayor of the place. What was the oldest journalism school, West Mississippi or whatever?
Oldest, best, and first.
There you go. I think there is a case to be made for the press was maybe finding a problem and alerting folks, right?
Well, look, anytime that anyone who's been a victim of identity theft knows how frustrating that can be. I think DESI acted quickly to notify those teachers so that they could take action. But I think this is a wake-up call for state legislatures, the governor, state and local governments. Yeah. We hold a treasure trove of private information. And yet the people who are in charge and entrusted with taking care of that are often the lowest paid in the nation. And so we need to make sure that our IT professionals and everyone who touches that private data are well compensated. Cyber liability premiums are going through the roof. Yeah. We all pay for that through higher taxes or diverted taxes, if you will. So we all need to protect this data with the same vigor that we do if it was someone's conceal and carry license.
I like that. Don Mayhew, it looks to me like there is a problem, and somebody needs to fix it pretty quick, because if you're a teacher, you don't get paid enough to have your private information out there. The Post is no friend of any Republican, and I don't think that's what comes as a surprise to anybody. But still, it seems like there's a problem they need to fix.
Well, first of all, I'm impressed that they were able to find any data on the DESI website. As a former school board member, I can tell you that's a difficult process to find the stuff that you need. But, seriously, that's a problem statewide, because we have databases of people's personal information scattered all over the place. We are trying to address that through the Office of Administration, trying to improve the computer system statewide. So hopefully that will also mean that we do some security-related issues. I'm sure we will. So.
Yeah, I think you may hear about that when you start putting together the budget, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We're hearing about it right now.
Yeah.
Well, and I think Missouri got a lot of flack when they were the last ones to adopt PDMP, but immediately when I saw this today, I mean, the people with privacy concerns, they're serious.
I never thought about that, but that does, those folks, there was a time in that debate where you started to roll your eyes about people that were saying that. Mm-hmm. But stuff like this, maybe they had a point, right?
Right.
Somewhere here, Rob Schaaf saying, I told you so. Mr. Mayor, there was a time where we all really believed I-70 from about Roachport, maybe even like from Odessa to Fulton, was going to be a parking lot. And this week you broke ground on a project. It's a tremendous thing. You're going to be able to replace that Roachport Bridge everyone in the state's drove over 20 times. You're going to be able to do it without shutting down traffic, right?
That's right. This is a generational investment, a $240 million project that really took what could have been an economic impact and turning it into an economic boon. But it's also, I think, a tangible reminder of what can happen when good people at the local, state, and federal level work together to get things done. In this case, through the help of U.S. Senator Rory Blunt, Governor Parson, the legislature, and local governments, including the City of Columbia, County of Boone, Booneville, Cooper County. We all came together, pooled our resources, and look what can happen.
Don, you're an engineer by trade. This state's going to miss Rory Blunt.
Yes, absolutely.
And you look at this project, I don't know that you get this done. I mean, in the Senate when they were passing it, everybody said, well, Senator Blunt will. He has to actually go do those things.
Well, whenever you're talking about money at those funding levels, that's kind of beyond an infrastructure program or a FMH, federal highway, transportation bill of some kind or another. So that always takes a little bit of special effort from our federal legislators of all kinds. I'm sure that there was others had input on that, but Roy certainly should get a lot of credit for that.
You talk about the federal government being bad, but there's no way to do that project like they're doing without the federal government.
That's true.
Jack Cardetti, roads are something you've talked about the whole time I've ever known you. Back when you worked in the AG's office and the governor's office under Governor Holden, this is the way government probably should work, right?
Yeah, a couple things here. There's a huge disagreement on what the role of government should be in this. But there's no one on this panel or anywhere that says good roads and bridges aren't the government's responsibility. I'm not building roads and bridges. My neighbor's not building those. That's the job of the government, one of the few jobs we can all agree on. And this is something where everybody's come together. And this is the difference in having a Roy Blunt, who I don't always agree with, in the Senate. Yeah. He likes to govern. The politics of it he'll do, and he does it well, but he likes to govern, and the fruits of that are coming to central Missouri.
I thought of you and Governor Dixon when we drove through Tuscumbia, over that enormous bridge, went down to Waynesville. That is a heck of a bridge, and you don't see it coming until you're on top of it.
Yeah, that all came because of the 2009 legislation. When the Congress passes this new infrastructure bill that's right on the precipice of passing here, there's going to be all kinds of projects like that funded. People like the mayor of Columbia and others are really going to get to see priorities that have long languished actually get done, and that's a good thing for everybody.
You know, Mayor Treece, it seems to me, if you're a Missourian and this bill's going to pass, whatever your politics, you want it to pass while Roy Blunt's in the Senate, because we will not get as good a deal if Roy Blunt's gone.
Look, Missouri's in line for anywhere from $6.5 billion to $8 billion in infrastructure and road and bridge related projects. I did an interview with the Wall Street Journal last week about the I-70-63 interchange. This is important. This is the crossroads of the country. We've got high-tech manufacturing, our food manufacturing corridor in Columbia that distributes goods and products across the country, but they all have to go through that intersection. It's a high priority project with no funding.
I've sat in my truck at the intersection for a long time. I've spent a lot of my life at that intersection. Tell me what it's going to look like.
Well, it's too early to do that engineering, but what we do know is that Aurora Dairy, the first dairy in Missouri in over 30 years, when they came online, 100 new trucks come through that intersection every day. That's just one of them. We've got Beyond Meat, we've got Swift Foods, a lot of manufacturing coming through that corridor right now every day. And if trucks cross that Roachport Bridge every 48 hours that go to 48 different states, chances are they're also going through that 63 I-70 intersection as well.
So, Bell, it is interesting. There's just, you think about something that really matters to the state. I don't care if you're in Pembroke County, Atchison County, that Roachport Bridge is something that at some point in your year you're going to cross once or twice.
Oh yeah, it is important, and it's important for the entire country. It's also just a great project for mid-Missouri. The number of jobs it's going to bring in, and then we were talking about those people need places to stay, they need places to eat. I mean, it's just a huge project for mid-Missouri.
Don, can you imagine the midnight oil you'd burn engineering that bridge?
That'd be a nice project to have, right? At 10% of construction cost? Absolutely.
All right, let's talk a little politics, Don. Tell me about this U.S. Senate race. You got 5 candidates. We heard 3 of them down in Pulaski County this week. What do you think?
Well, I've got a little bit of a bias. My congresswoman is from the 4th District, and I'm in the 4th District. But I think all the candidates that were there, the ones that showed up, did a really good job. I was pretty impressed with Attorney General Schmidt's presentation, but the rest of them, any one of them would make an excellent candidate.
It was very classy, I thought, of Congresswoman Hartzer to talk about some of the lawsuits that Eric Schmidt's filed. That is just kind of, she truly is. She walks in class, and it really showed.
Yeah.
Assembly Bell, you talk to these candidates on the radio. They come ask you for your support. What do you think? Where's the race at?
Yeah, well, I think Schmidt has a lot of momentum right now. He has been a leader not only in Missouri, but, in the nation as far as attorney generals go, as far as pushing back against the Biden administration. But I wouldn't count Hartzler out. She's really strong on China. She's represented us well, and the fundraising numbers came out today, I believe. And it looks like, although Schmidt had a lead in the quarter fundraising, I think she ultimately has more cash on hand. So I think the two of them right now are the front runners.
Jack Cardetti, it's interesting to me. I watched you work in that AG's office that did propel a certain governor or a certain AG to become governor. It is an amazing office to really impact policy, but really raise your profile. And I think the Attorney General Schmidt's getting every ounce out of that right now.
Yeah, when Jay Nixon ran for governor in 2008, his name ID statewide was more than 80%. That's unheard of for a down ballot statewide. I think the most telling thing about the U.S. Senate race, though, this week, was Eric Greitens released his own internal polling. And what it showed was a couple months ago, he was at 48 in this race, and now he's at 36. So he's still touting that he's in the lead. But imagine that, 1 out of every 4 voters that supported him a couple months ago have left him. So the question is, where does those votes go, right? And who can consolidate that vote? Because I do think Eric Greitens is in a bit of a free fall, and that's without him having a glove laid on him yet. But where do those votes go? That ultimately will determine the primary.
It feels like to me his floor is a little lower than I might have thought it was earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you drop 12 points over a matter of just a couple months, that's not statistical noise in the polling. That is an actual movement.
So, but put your media hat on for a second. Anymore, do you ever believe a poll released by a candidate?
No.
Yeah, I mean, I used to put a little stock in them depending on who it was, but now it's just chuckle worthy. Mayor Treece, Democrats, there's some running. Scott Sifton, a guy that folks know here very well, one of probably the best state senator Democrats have put out maybe in the last 10 years. He's running. Lucas Kuntz, gentleman that's from this part of the state actually. Can they put up a candidate that puts up a good challenge?
Oh, of course, but it relies upon Eric Greitens being the Republican nominee.
Oh, yeah, right.
And those polls are all over the place, and I think Greitens supporters are more difficult to define in those polls. They're your more non-traditional Trump supporting voters that may not respond to those polls. His poll showed him double digits up. General Schmidt's poll showed him 1 digit up. I still think there's room for another big name Republican to come in and consolidate those votes.
I want to ask you one question before we go. The states continually tried to put in some Medicaid rules that keep Planned Parenthood from getting any money. Give me a prediction. I just don't know that any willing provider you're ever going to really get over. What do you think?
This is not about abortion. It is about not paying a health care provider for providing a legal service.
Well, my predicted question is, will they ever get there where they find a way to exclude Planned Parenthood from Medicaid funds?
No, because if you do it for Planned Parenthood, you have to do it for every nursing home, healthcare provider, ambulatory surgery center. Every year, tens of thousands of women and men get their primary health care from Planned Parenthood, and they have a consumer right to pick their provider.
You ever get there?
No.
I don't think so either. You ever get there? You're an attorney. Can you ever get there around any willing provider?
We have done such a good job. In 2010, there were 6,000 abortions in Missouri. We're down to 46. I mean, kudos to us for being one of the most pro-life states in the nation.
They ever get there?
No, and again, these 11 clinics around the state are providing things like cancer screenings, STD testing and treatment, and contraceptions. Those are the types
they have
of
an argument how that
access.
ties into abortion. I just don't think they ever get there, right?
Yeah, I don't think so either. I don't
minute
think
left,
rule
2
ever
on the
goes
week.
effect.
U.S. Senator Rory Blunt. I mean, the groundbreaking of the Roachport Bridge, a lot of kudos to Senator Blunt. On Tuesday of this week, the Rory Blunt Next Gen Precision Health Complex is going to be dedicated. And we haven't even begun to touch his Wildlife Conservation Act that could pour millions of dollars into states like Missouri for habitat conservation.
One of the week?
One of the least written about national stories that's happening here in Missouri is the NFL lawsuit with the St. Louis Rams.
Yes.
And Sports Illustrated said it this week, the NFL's losing, and they're losing badly. St. Louis City taxpayers won the week because the question is whether hundreds of millions are coming their way or billions are coming their way is the only open question.
Without Jack Coder, none of this happens. I don't think he gets enough credit for that.
Absolutely.
Who won the week?
I think KCPD, the judge recently ruled that they tried to defund the police and move some money around, and the court said no.
Who won the week?
Mine's going to be a little odd. Sarah Stillman won the week. She's finally going to take a respite from her many years of dedicated service to the state of Missouri, so thank you very much, Sarah.
And you'll be able to tell that we do not rehearse these ahead of time, because I would say Sarah Stillman as well, someone who served this state in the legislative branch, executive branch, someone who is a long-term Missourian, really did a great job at OA and deserves a little time off from getting bothered by people. We hope you'll take a little time off and then join us next week and let's bother you on This Week in Missouri Politics.
This Week in Missouri Politics, sponsored by the Missouri Association of Career Fire Protection Districts, Spire, and Sterling Bank.
Guys, thank you so much for watching the show. I want to tell you about a new thing we're offering. It's the Missouri Times Podcast Network. You'll get this show every week. If you want to listen to it in your car, you don't have time to watch it. You'll get our Show in Missouri podcast, History of Missouri, one county at a time. You'll also get our midweek update. Once a week, I throw up the Facebook Live. We talk politics, usually eat a little lunch and discuss politics. You'll get to hear all those things come right to your phone. Subscribe to us on iTunes or Android. Missouri Times Podcast Network. Please join us and subscribe.